Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast Transformational Architecture, Engineering, and Construction, or AEC. I'm Bill Ruh, your host. Now, the property market is one of the largest industries in the world, and yet it's one of the last to be transformed by technology. Given the size of the prize, there's definitely great opportunity to make giant leaps in the quality of buildings, reducing time and cost to address affordability and profitability issues that the industry faces, making construction safer, and reducing the carbon footprint of construction and operations. These are global trillion-dollar opportunities. Now, there have been attempts in the past, but these have always fallen short of transformation. Digitization of design was the last major transformation that began over 30 years ago. Now, BIM has been an important technology, but it hasn't been transformational yet. It has been important to record keeping, but it hasn't yet solved larger automation, workflow, collaboration, and commercial problems. But it seems like now the technology and infrastructure is beginning to appear, led by cloud and AI, coupled with large quantities of data. This is opening new opportunities to develop technologies that can transform this industry. Now, this will not be easy, as this industry has some uniquenesses that are major roadblocks to success. Projects involve many different players with different competing interests. Projects often become 100% bespoke. Large number of organizations are needed to design, build, supply, and operate a building. Costs are not often understood until late in the process, and design may not accurately reflect the physical reality. Lastly, industry culture is often skeptical of innovation. But today we're going to talk to the CEO of Podium.io, a startup developing a platform that they believe will transform the industry. This is a platform that will automate and streamline development and construction, as well as create a marketplace for solutions. And so let's jump in and talk to our first guest, Pankaj Srivastava. Pankaj is the CEO of Podium.io, a company trying to lead us into transforming the world of architecture, engineering, and construction. So welcome, Pankaj, and thanks for joining the podcast. Let's start with your background, because you've got quite an impressive but eclectic background. You were in AI before anybody thought you should be in AI, studying AI at MIT in the really early days. And you've worked at consulting firms, you worked at big companies like Cisco, and you've also worked for small startups. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey to get to Podium?
Oh, absolutely, Bill. Thank you. Look, I've been writing software since I got my first Apple IIe in 1983, and I am in love with how much software can disrupt industry. I call software the universal catalyst for disrupting industries. And it is data that software produces a universal solvent. I always look for those opportunities. When I finished my computer science degree at AI at MIT, my first job was building neural nets for hedge fund trading. And we were writing them in C++ and pulling out our hair, but we knew that we were onto something. Unfortunately, infrastructure, data, all of that wasn't ready. Took a lot, but all hedge funds today are powered by neural nets. Long before neural nets and CNN and deep learning was, a household name in recent years. So that got me hooked. I left that and I went to the e-commerce world with some consulting companies and software startups to really bring that power of AI to e-commerce. And I was a Netscape bigot. If anybody was in the first internet wave, I was building on the Netscape platform, which was the first true thin client platform until Microsoft disrupted that with the Internet Explorer. But for me, e-commerce was massively disruptive. In fact, the early days of digitalization was about really how you bring digital value to the back end through exposing everything that happens at big companies onto the customer. People couldn't connect to their customers without e-commerce. So I was caught up with that and then joined a few startups. One of those startups, of course, Bill, was acquired by yours. And we almost went public before the dot-com bust. And that was a lot of fun. And we were trying to disrupt the market of enterprises and how they go to their customers by bringing e-commerce technology. So my journey has always been a common theme is, look, I think software continues to democratize. I am not a guy who builds core technology as much as I apply it. And I think if you understand it and you apply it, it can help transform and catalyze whole change. Good software understanding. I've been applying AI, internet, e-commerce, cloud. And with Bill at Cisco, we just started disrupting the industry industrial sector with IoT. And so we were the first. In fact, you remember, Bill, you were one of the first people out there bringing the idea of IoT to life, Internet of Things. And then you took that forward at GE with Predix. And that's what I've done. And after Cisco, I was in the genomic space because precision medicine is going to disrupt healthcare as well, where we're not all going to be bombed by the same chemicals. Medicine will quickly understand who we are down to our genome and our cell structure. I was in that space having a lot of fun, and then Bill recruited me to the property industry. One thing I learned over the years in all these different roles, big and small, is big companies, small companies, is if you want to innovate, you have to bring something very disruptive with software, some new kind of technology to a new space. You have to find the white space because you can't disrupt something that's working pretty well. You've got to pick places that are really not moving as fast as they should, and you've got to find a way to scale it. And what I thought until Bill recruited me to Lend-Lease to build Podium with him, I thought that the healthcare industry was the largest industry in the world, $10 trillion. Turns out that the property industry is a $20 trillion industry that's been barely touched by technology. The largest software players' products are still primarily used on desktop and on Windows software as opposed to on the cloud. And so this was an industry ready for disruption. Really, Bill, when you and I looked at it at Lend-Lease, we realized that it's not just something Lend-Lease can do for itself. We can transform the world. And 10 of the $20 trillion is spent in property development, design, and construction. But the other 10 is spent in managing the properties once they're up and running. In that $10 trillion, there's barely any software. Enterprise grade, crowd grade, AI, anything. In fact, billions of dollars on each project are managed by Excel, Outlook, PDF, and PowerPoint. So this whole industry runs on what I call circa 1999 digital technology. And they've all missed the boat. So this is why I've been at Podium. And this is why I've been pursuing the vision of Podium and at Lend-Lease. And now we've spun it out. We're very excited because I think we're about to disrupt the industry.
What is it about our industry that makes transformation and digitization so hard? And is it really possible to disrupt in this industry?
Yeah, no, absolutely, Bill. It's a great point. And not only, I think the other thing that's very compelling, interesting about the McKinsey study is not only are we at the bottom of the stack, maybe above hunting and fishing, but our productivity metrics keep going down. And why is that? Because it takes about 3 to 5 years to build out projects. A project being any large development, and then turn it operational. And a lot of that is caught up in manual processes and outsourcing and contract risk management to general contractors and architects, and essentially managing it financially, as opposed to realizing that a building and a place that you're putting the building on is a system. It's a system that you're putting in and a system that once up and running will be populated and inhabited. You have to sustain it and you turn it into money. So whether it's computer, whether it's a chip, whether it's a plane, whether it's a human being, everything else has been digitized to be treated like a system that you can maintain, manage, and design. We don't treat the building as one integrated, holistic system. We fork it out to all the specialists and hope eventually that it comes together, and we do a lot of rework. So productivity is one of the biggest issues, and the downward trend on productivity is a bigger issue. It's compounded by the fact that there are a lot of tailwinds. As we emerge out of COVID and other things, the time is now because every region, except for a few, that are struggling like China right now, is trying to get back, trying to meet its population growth demands with sustainable properties and new kinds of places to meet the needs of its industry, its people, and how they work, live, and play. And they can't keep up because they don't apply technology. They don't treat buildings as a digitized system. So productivity and so cost keeps ballooning up. It keeps going up, and concrete is one of the largest drivers of carbon emissions. So as these properties are built out, every industry that is taking it on in every region has to team up with the public sector, which is driving sustainability metrics. So the property developers now have charters and targets on sustainability and productivity, and it's compounding to the fact that it is causing more and more issues, and with interest rates high, it's reducing profitability. So the industry is facing a crisis. It's facing
So
crisis. They haven't looked at technology at all to fix it.
the real issue then is you've got several forces that are beginning to act upon our industry to make the change. So it's affordable housing, sustainability, profit levels, complexity, quality. Everyone's going to be forced in the next decade to begin to embrace the technology in order to address these challenges. Though, wasn't BIM supposed to solve this problem two decades ago? And where does BIM fit into this?
Yeah, BIM was supposed to, but all BIM really did is create a standard model to allow 2D CAD drawings to go 3D and still live on the desktop of architects and structural engineers. It didn't bring the idea of how you create a connected model, how you design the whole building, how you drive outcomes. So outcomes is what the industry is looking for. BIM was supposed to encapsulate that, but it's missed the mark because it's essentially upgraded 2D drawings to 3D drawings. And if you look at Autodesk, who's a key partner of ours, investor and industry leader, they're also trying to drive the industry to go beyond BIM, because BIM caps out with its information models and things at essentially data standards. It's not just about data, it's about models, it's about systematizing things, it's about connecting all the other dimensions of activity that make up a multi-dimensional system like a building. Now, I look back and I joined this, I said, it was in the early 90s that Boeing designed the 777 as a complete digital system on a early version of the digital twin. Why can't we have a true digital twin of a building that becomes the simulation point, the AI point, the model point? And that's what BIM fails to do. It doesn't let you build a whole building system model.
So tell us a little bit about then Podium.io and what you're trying to do.
No, absolutely, Bill. When we looked at Podium, and you were heavily involved with this at Lend-Lease as well, we realized that in this industry, unlike any other industry, software does not serve the people who control the business. It serves the specialists. So CAD and BIM just create better tools for the architects and designers. But the building is a business and a living system that is commissioned by a property developer who is taking massive risk and tying up billions of dollars over 5 years in the hopes and the plans of making a huge profit, huge return, or huge annuity once that building system goes live. And it's becoming harder and harder for them to do that without the technology. So we looked at all the industries. We built Podium as a platform with a data lake and a data model across the spectrum of property managed construction. And we really honed in the product market fit on the biggest issue facing us. And I'll just give you an example of it. If you look anywhere, you're in Bozeman or if you're in Huntington Beach, if you look at a large building that costs $1 billion to build, it usually takes 3 to 5 years to build. Of the $1 billion, about $100 million is spent on architecture and design fees. $100 million on essentially creating PDFs and Excel reports on the fact that the building's ready. And not only that, that design phase of getting that building design commissioned takes about 12 to 18 months of that 3 years before you put any ounce of concrete on the ground. And then when you put concrete on the ground, because your model is only designed perfect, but it's not treated as a system, you have a lot of rework. So that's where we focused in Podium. And we've said, look, let's disrupt this, because this is the place where you can actually encapsulate most of what architects and designers do, especially the things that are repetitive, and help create repeatable designs and save time, save enormous amount of time, and get to the act of building the building that these property developers need. So that's been the focus of Podium. Is we've built a platform that truly disrupts the workflows that are involved, that are all manual today, up to point where construction begins. We're also focused on bringing the power of vertical AI in the form of agents, we call them solvers, that come together to really capture the intelligence and the algorithms, the heuristics of what an architect designer does on a daily basis to automate most of the process. So our focus is automation and in the thinking and automation of the collaboration so that you can actually reduce the cycle time of what it takes to get a building. We think we can actually take 30 to 50% or more off what it takes in the design time of a building, which is 40% of the total time for constructing a building.
Well, that if you can achieve that over the next decade, that's a game changer. A lot of technology exists to build solvers. So what's really different from the way people have been building solvers, say, for the last 5 years, to what you're really providing that differentiates it or provides greater value?
No, absolutely, Bill. Look, everybody has built their bite-sized technology, and then where does that sit? It sits on their desktop. It sits in their environment. It sits in a way that they can create a better answer for their customer, the property developer. It doesn't serve the property developer. What we've done is we've created a common cloud. We run it today on the Google Cloud. It can run on any cloud where you can bring your model, your building model to life. Why on the cloud? Because these models are large. They contain a lot of data, not just design data, but financial data, regulatory data. They also tap into what's happening in the region in terms of the views, the sunlight. We bring all that together into models, and then we plug the algorithms in there. And then we invite everybody to bring their solvers onto it as well. The suppliers bring their solvers, the architects. And what you do is you get a holistic building model emerge. The best way to describe it is it becomes a true digital twin of a building that actually encapsulates not just the design and the details that the architect cares about and the abilities that the structural engineer cares about, but it also incorporates all of the analysis and lets you scale it up and share it back. And then it's one thing to have one model in the cloud. We also wrap it with workflows that can work not just within the architecture firm or the engineering firm or the property developer. It can work across them and the regulatory agencies to submit all that as one model to the industry. Regulators say, we're ready in record time with better quality and better vetting, and we're not going to have, conflicts between what our architects design and our structural engineers analyze. It all comes together as one synthetic model that can drive the process faster. And we do it in the cloud. And so that is the key. That's, we become the platform where you can collect and build all the solvers.
What does platform mean to you? And when you talk about the Podium platform, what exactly is it? And if I'm using the Podium platform, what benefit is it to me?
Absolutely. So look, I think at the heart of the platform, what we're talking about is, as a platform, is a common place for the ecosystem of a property developer, a supplier, their suppliers, their architects, designers, and their regulators to whom they're submitting their proposals can all come together and collaborate. So we provide that, and it's powered by a set of workflows and deliverables that are dynamically coming out because everybody's working at this. At the heart of this, the nucleus of this, is that synthetic building model, that holistic building model, which captures the best of what the architects have asked for, what the system has simulated on their behalf, the structural analysts have asked for, and the structures calculated on their behalf, what the suppliers are bringing in terms of their catalogs, and what the system has factored in as the best possible parts for the price points that are available, comes together. But it's a dynamic platform in the sense that that model and the supporting workflows and the orchestration across this community is done in real time, dynamically, and an ongoing basis. Today, an average cycle time of getting a new scenario built, a property commissioned by a property developer, can cost thousands of dollars and weeks. I'll give you an example. We were doing a project with Podium and Lend-Lease in the Bay Area, and the customer decided they wanted to go from mass timber to steel frame on the structure, on the building in the Bay Area. Well, It was sent back to the architect structural engineer. It was 3 weeks before they came back. They charged another $50,000 to $80,000 to that analysis and gave them a set of PDFs. All that can be done dynamically. So the platform has a lot of technology to make this possible, but it's a business platform. It's a multi-sided platform on one side, but most importantly, it's a collaboration platform where all the participants in a project that's about to go live or is getting commissioned or planned can participate and look at it and touch it. It's very much, I look at this industry and I said, as this comes to life, Podium will do for this industry what Boeing and others do for their industry. And you guys did this at GE. Locomotive engines are designed by GE, but all their ecosystem and their buyers are all looking at it. Similarly, big planes are. They're all working on that common model. It's dynamically evolving, and scenarios are happening every day, and you don't lose time. So that's what Podium's doing, is creating that platform for the ecosystem of players that have to work today on the basis of Excel, PowerPoint, and conference calls to solve these problems. We're saying it can all be done in the cloud with every constituent and every expert factored in real time. To me, that is the idea of a universal catalyst in software.
Are you developing all the solvers? Are you developing all the workflows? Or can all of these participants do that? And is there some form of data control? I'm a supplier, I don't put my data on, I lose control of my data. Well, those are probably the two things people care about when they work on a real quality platform. So how do you address that?
So we talked just now about the business platform. It becomes a place where all the participants collaborate and look at each other's work and get the benefit of it and come to the model. But underneath is a set of technologies. And so to your question, what we've done is created a rich set of APIs and tools that allow not only our software team to build these algorithms and build these workflows, which we do to seed the market, but we make those available as what the software industry calls SDK, Software Developer Kit. On the data model, we have a universal standard data model for this architecture. We give that data model to suppliers, to architects. They're able to contribute it. In fact, our early customers who are property developers who have their own in-house architects and structural engineers are now starting to take an industrial building and create their own format of it, and then they say, I don't want this design shared with my other customers. So that's the other power of cloud. Cloud gives us the ability to be what's called multi-tenanted. So we then make sure that based on the licensing and agreements with them, if they don't want to share, those specializations of those algorithms and those workflows and those reconfigurations are all running in their tenancy or their partition of their cloud. Think of it as their own cloud. But some of the customers are saying, look, I want to do this, but I want actually a license fee. I want to share it with others in the industry. So they're actually finding an aftermarket for their designs to be going after others that may not be in their region, but could benefit it. So we've got that kind of capability. Suppliers want to make sure that their catalog's available, but they don't want the catalogs shared with other suppliers. So we protect that. But suppliers are also now building their own rhythms and solvers to say, how do you make sure that you can factor this into all the different building types in each region to be the best fit for, let's say, a highly sustainable lift core. Schindler is an example of an investor in this. So we've had to provide all those underpinnings, because once you're in, it's just like being on Airbnb or anywhere else. If you're setting up your property, you're going to curate it to your needs. You're going to want it to be available for your customer base, but you're not going to want to make everything available in that to the rest of your market, your competitors. So that is key to this as well.
Well, it kind of blows my mind that there's actually multifaceted aspects of this platform. It started with a project. How do I take a big residential project to make it go faster? But you actually then have a facet that's, well, everyone can now put their own data in, their own solvers in, and complement it. Then you have
That's
the ability that it becomes a marketplace for solvers, a marketplace for designs, a marketplace for suppliers. So the architects now have an ability to get more leverage out of what they do. The engineers do as well. The suppliers do.
That's right.
Everyone who participates can either create their own value or acquire value from others to allow their projects to go faster. That is exciting because that's a real network effect. And
That's
in
right.
transformation, you always look for that. So I think that's quite exciting what you're doing. So who are you working with? What are the partners? What are the investors?
Absolutely, Bill. So to your point, the Autodesk is a key investor and partner because they want the market, they want the industry to evolve from CAD and BIM, which they help create, to outcome-based BIM, industry cloud, where you can connect all the participants and all the stakeholders to really drive value in several key areas: cost, time to delivery, net operating income on the project, affordability, sustainability, and reuse. Reuse is very key because it turns out, other than a few big iconic buildings like the Empire State Building, or if you've been to Singapore, the Marina Bay Sands, most buildings can be repeatably built. And so, but every time a building is commissioned by a developer, which is similar to the last building, it's actually a completely bespoke building. So what we're doing is not only creating this environment, we're creating a data lake of models that then, and parts and supplier configurations and designs that then can be reused. This is bringing object-oriented design and lean manufacturing principles to the property development industry. Why can Toyota and Boeing on the same assembly line manufacture two different vehicles, two different planes? Because they have the model that allows them to swap in and swap out parts and keep 60% cost common. A Toyota Corolla and a RAV4 have the same chassis, but a building that looks essentially the same in two parts of the city don't have the same designs underneath. So we are creating that kind of architecture, and that's why the suppliers and the design firms and and Autodesk are so keen, because once we do that, property developers at scale can then commission multiple projects at the same time or plan for them. I'll give you an example. Cervana Jurong is one of our investors, one of the largest AEC firms in terms of architects and structural engineers out of Singapore. They see this as a way to disrupt themselves in the industry, as a way to create a new class of solutions and services that allow their largest developer customers to leverage Cervana to create properties faster and rinse and repeat what they want to do across a certain kind of property, let's say a mid-range residential tower. Autodesk sees this as a way to allow architects and designers to now connect with the real spenders, which are the property developers, and deliver that time to the value, the cost. Take out that $50,000 that took to turn around a scenario in 3 weeks. Take that out completely. We are working with some of the largest property developers in India. One of the large conglomerates says, with this, I can transform the industry where I can actually go out and meet India's growth demand by bringing hundreds of feasibility studies to life without much cost. And I can have the right design partners, such as Cervana, help me create the projects in a repeatable basis. So it brings the ecosystem together. So our partners are Autodesk and Cervana Jurong. Lend-Lease is already now starting to apply it into their own markets. And then finally, in terms of suppliers, we've also had the privilege of getting Schindler to invest, because they see this as a way to get in early in the projects and create a high quality product and design it and take the time out that goes into reworking and customizing the lift shafts and the elevator cores and the escalator systems. Once construction begins, the cost in them and the general contractor is huge. So we've got partners like Cervana, architecture firms who want to digitize the processes, not just the tools that architects use. We've got Schindler, who wants to bring in these kinds of high value supplies and components early in the process so that there's not a lot of rework and quality issues and safety issues later. And we've got partners like Autodesk, who are really saying this is the linchpin, in fact, to outcomes-based BIM. In fact, if people are interested, they can see Autodesk featured us at their Auto University in October in San Diego as one of the key tools powered by AI to bring outcomes-based BIM to life. And very soon, maybe the next episode, I'll mention some of the customers that have actually applied this with all these partners. And we're really, as we go after each of these large customers that are trying to transform not just one building, but build hundreds of buildings, or plan for 100 and build tens of buildings, platform is bringing all these partners together with them.
You spun out of Lend-Lease. Congratulations on your your A round that you just completed. That was really awesome. You're headquartered in Singapore. Why?
Yeah, Singapore. Look, we're following. You got to pick. You can't go after the whole world with this with technology. Although you know you can disrupt the whole world, you have to pick your land and expand points. Jeffrey Moore calls it your lighthouse customer that helps you cross your chasm. Others call it the product market fit. Who is your co-innovation partner? What we found is Singapore has had a vision for this. Singapore has been BCA organization, which is their authority, is a market leader, an industry leader in thinking in terms of how this all comes together. And so they have been driving what's called a industrialized design delivery, digital IDD, integrated design delivery framework. And they're actually establishing regulations and policies and creating systems which allow developers to work digitally in moving the process forward. Why? Because Singapore has limited space. It has a growing population. In the next couple of years, they'll go from 5 to 6 million, probably 10 million by the end of this decade. They don't have more land, but they've got to build faster. They've got to build more. And all that's been stuck in the productivity issues. They've got to bring sustainability to the next level. They've got to manage all the cost issues. So they've established, the government is driving this top down, and what they've done is they've fired up their key public developers to follow this process. So Singapore was a perfect fit for us, not only because there's such demand, but there is a strong endorsement and a standard. And if people are interested, look up IDD by BCA. You'll find it very compelling. It's the first time I've found a reference architecture in an industry that provides product market fit for true disruption. And I think what Singapore will do is we'll take smart property development as a model to the rest of the world. And we're already teaming up with BCA to see how we can actually bring this message to other parts of the world, because every region wants this. It's just Singapore has a true public-private partnership model in their business, in their government. So it was a perfect market for us, and they gave us a great reference architecture, and they gave us great reference customers that actually are trying to espouse the future of digitization for property development.
So I think it's very smart to be in Singapore. And then, with the Economic Development Board there helping to guide and support, it's a great idea. But you're not limited to Singapore. I hear you working in India. I hear you working in Australia. I hear you working in the US. I assume at some point you get to Europe.
Yeah, it's the land point. It's the expand point. It's where we prove the market. I mean, the one thing also Singapore is very strong about is repeatability. They want to bring design for manufacturability to the property development standard. In fact, based on their ideas, we brought that idea of suppliers into the platform faster. So all we need to do is pick the typologies. Today, we support residential, public and private, and industrial, and then just expand to typology and then adapt the typologies for each region. What are the regulatory constraints? What are the land masses? What is the geography there? And also, what are the supplier base? And so as we go from region to region, once we have a typology working in Singapore, it takes us a matter of a month or so to get ready for the next region with that typology. And then we work with the local partners and the customers to say, what additional solvers and algorithms and workflows do you need for you? Do you want that made available to all the players in the participant, or do you want it just in your environment? So that's why this is truly a cloud platform. And in that context, I'd like to call out that, cloud allows us to scale to the market. We want to go anywhere that $10 trillion market for property development, design, construction needs this. And so we're also partnering with Google Cloud. What we run in the cloud for Singapore now, we're setting up with them in the India cloud, and we've been setting up in the Australia cloud. And it's just very easy. That's an overnight thing to set up the whole system in the next region. And then it's another month to get the data and everything loaded up and the regulations connected in and the ecosystem suppliers plugged in, but you're ready to go. But only cloud. And I think I like to use the term cloud speed. This industry runs at concrete speed. And, the rest of the world has gone to, it takes time to dry concrete is what the industry runs at. Internet speed came out in the mid 90s. We're now at cloud speed. And what's coming next is AI speed, which kind of breaks all barriers. So I think at least we're bringing this industry cloud speed with the power of AI. And then it'll be more adaptive as we go.
You've been a long time Silicon Valley guy. You're now running a company headquartered in Singapore. What do you see as the differences to being a Silicon Valley startup versus a Singapore startup?
Look, I think just over the last 5 years, I've seen it converging. When I first started coming here for this, there wasn't as much of an emphasis in software, but there were other key industries. But I think over the last 5-10 years, EDB and the government has been pushing for Singapore to become a leader in software. You see more and more of the big .coms from China being headquartered here, and that's coming. All the big tech firms out of the valley establishing this as a center of operations, some R&D, some sales and marketing as they move out of Hong Kong. You see a lot of the big unicorns out of India coming here. And so you see more and more of a software ecosystem emerging. Just like we saw Israel become essentially another valley and then parts of London become like that for fintech. And I think Singapore is doing a lot to essentially transform part of the industry into being a software innovation center for cloud, AI, and they're bringing consciously in all the different players and inviting, and it's a very business-friendly environment. So I think what I find in Singapore, what's different is that it's still early days for that high-intensity innovation culture. Still needs more of that critical mass of people like you, me, Bill, and hardcore software engineers, and more are coming. But the journey's begun. But it's a business-friendly environment. There's a growing VC base. In fact, my next round, some of my investors are actually local versus, the global VCs behind this following Autodesk. So I think Singapore is setting itself up to be another valley, right? And you see that in Bangalore now, you see that in Israel, you see that in a few other key regions and areas, and you're starting to see Singapore essentially, again, in that government sponsorship model, starting to create that ecosystem here. We're early days, but more than half my team is Singaporean.
Any podcasts that you're listening to other than this one that are influencing you'd recommend for others who are listening on?
I listen to a lot of podcasts. Look, I will share my favorite podcast right now, and it's not related to software. My other love is history, geopolitics, and so I follow a podcast called Empire by Alan Delaroe, and it's worth listening to. It talks about how the world has evolved, and it starts with the first season being about the British Empire and how the East India Company was like the early version of Facebook and Tesla, and it was a conglomerate that emerged. So worth listening to, guys, if you're interested. It's definitely not in this space, but that's my favorite podcast at the moment. I will share others if I come back. Yeah, absolutely.
So, last question: what's your favorite restaurant in Singapore that if I go, I gotta go to?
Singapore, like New York City and a few other places, London, and also Tokyo, is a foodie town. I actually don't have a favorite restaurant that persists. I have a favorite restaurant of the month. So I just went to a place in MBS called Milos. It's a new Greek place where you bring in fresh fish from the Mediterranean and they cook it Greek style. It's great. They grill it, and it's quite an experience. I'd recommend anybody trying that.
Well, thank you. And we've run out of time, so I'm going to we'll move on. And really enjoyed talking to you. Great progress. And any potential partners out there with a platform like this, they should give you a call and see what you guys can do together. Well, that was a very exciting interview with Pankaj, and his vision for the future of AEC is certainly transformational. And the work that he's doing with Podium.io, that platform could become the cornerstone of what sparks this revolution of disruption so that we can solve these big challenges and really address this $1 trillion opportunity. Now, I just want to call out a few of the key points that he said, although there's not enough time to cover everything that Pankaj talked about. But I think for the listener, the idea that, starting with this idea that software has been a universal catalyst for disrupting industries, and that all industries are like dominoes, that eventually that software disruption occurs and it changes that industry for the future. Now, today our industry, which we all love because it creates such great product, it creates such great value in the world, is still based on a nice Excel world. And finally, there's a technology or a series of technologies available to underpin that transformation, and that is cloud and Gen AI. But if you're really going to address it, the technology alone isn't going to solve the problem because nobody knows how to use the technology. They don't know how to create the value out of it. So something like Podium.io is necessary to unlock that value. And underpinning it is not so much the technology, it's the idea that buildings need to be treated like systems in the design phase, in the construction phase, and in the operation phase. And we have seen this in other industries, the chip design industry, the airplane industry, the spacecraft industry. All of these industries have gone through the systemization of how they designed, how they build it, and how they operate it, leading to the kinds of transformation that we're looking for in our own industry. Now, the key to what has happened in those other industries and what they did is a couple of things. One is they applied this idea of generative design where software is used to augment the design process. They have reusable components that are brought in to simplify those designs based on what really works. They design for manufacturing automation, and they have collaborative workflow automation for large teams of disparate people to work together over a long period of time to generate that end product. But in the end, a platform is needed as a common place for all those participants to interact, for all the data to exist. But at the same time, the platform has to be open for all the participants to innovate on their own and to put their own data in, but to own their innovation and own their data through the whole process. And I think one of the things that is truly foundationally game-changing is, and for this particular platform, is by bringing suppliers in so that they can participate in the design is incredibly powerful, because that idea of them knowing their products the best, them innovating to include it in the design, them being able to ensure that what gets put in the design is a real manufacturable product or the most cost-effective product for the need for the building. And that, I think, creates opportunities to further enhance this and create a marketplace for the future. And that's when we can see real transformational change in our industry. And if you look at Podium.io, I think it's trying to tackle these rocket science level problems, and it's been able to address quite a number of them. But this is not a game that can be won by any one individual. It requires working with other folks in the industry, and they're fortunate they're working with great partners, investors to build from. So in technology, Autodesk, who has led one of these transformations in the past in design. Architecture and engineering with Sabrina Jurong, a global player in this space. Developers working with Lend-Lease, who incubated this idea, and suppliers like Schindler. But they also have another partner that is quite exciting, and that is, a lot of support out of the government and with industry in Singapore. And what is exciting and what I learned is Singapore is an emerging startup leader, and they have all the elements necessary for startups to be successful. And with Podium.io there, and with a lot of the work being done in Singapore, it's a great spot for prop tech and construction tech to be built upon. Those are some great lessons learned. And I really believe that can be that what Pankaj is doing and team is doing can be a major transformation for our industry. Now, going forward, this podcast will have other great transformation leaders, and we'll look at a variety of different approaches being used to really help our industry go through this foundational change, because now is the time and the place to do this. So thank you very much, and look forward to catching up with you next time.